You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 580, Pilates for Everybody with Shelley Cotton.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I'm Amanda Valentine, returning guest. It's been about a year or so, right?
I think so.
Shelley from Shellates Pilates. So you've been on the podcast before. We talked all about your Pilates studio and kind of the history of Pilates. But now I'm coming to your studio because you're trying to help me. I mean, I've had these like pinched nerve, jacked up issues all year that's kind of like put me out of commission, which has been horrible mentally and physically. And then you're like, you should be doing Pilates. I'm like, you know what? I should be doing Pilates.
That's right.
So before we get into all that though, like tell me about, for anybody that hasn't listened to your episode, I mean, it was a year ago, so I'd say the odds are pretty good.
Right.
that it's been a minute that nobody memorized it, including myself. Tell me all about your studio and your background.
Well, our studio offers Pilates classes, privates, semi-privates. We also have personal training. Our group classes are probably the most popular. We just have small group classes, which is nice. I would say a lot of the Pilates studios around here are very small, and I think that is probably more beneficial overall. Pilates equipment can be scary, but it shouldn't be.
The reformer looks a little kink.
Yeah, but it's not. Once you're on there,
Yeah.
It's not really scary, right? But being in a smaller class on this equipment, because you can get hurt. You could definitely get hurt on this equipment. So I really also recommend being in a class where your instructor is kind of, right there, able to help you, adjust you. Because that's the whole idea of Pilates. Like it's a place you can come when you are hurt, but also you can come to be challenged and get a great workout. It's not a place you should come and get hurt.
Yeah. So how long has your studio been open here in Cincinnati?
I've been in this space, actually, it will be 6 years, the end of this month.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then for reference, for people in Cincinnati, Shellates is kind of across the street from Cincy 360 Fitness. So you're just like a block down.
Yeah,
or so, across
exactly.
from Street Side Brewery.
Right.
And but what I think is interesting is through COVID, you've also gone virtual.
Right. I was already doing a lot of virtual stuff. I've had clients in different states for a while. Like I just have had some clients that have moved away and then decided they wanted to keep up training. So fortunately, I was pretty used to doing that. So we transitioned. DeWine made us close Monday, whatever that was, the 16th, March 16th. And we started virtual classes the next morning. So I usually used FaceTime before because it was more one-on-one stuff. I had to look into the different platforms for doing it, like Zoom and Google and all the different ones. But yeah, we transitioned pretty well, and people are loving the virtual classes. They make jokes like they don't even have to brush their teeth. They just throw a mat down and they're ready to go, especially 6 a.m., roll out of bed. So we have classes at all different times. We added the reformer classes back in July, but we still kept a lot of virtual options because some people just are not comfortable coming back. And some people are sticking with virtual because of the convenience also.
Yeah. So to do a virtual Pilates class, you just need a mat?
Yeah, we add a few props here and there, but sometimes it depends on who's in the class and what you have, like bands, maybe a small ball. But that's maybe some small weights. We have PIO classes too, which is a little bit of Pilates and yoga. Those are very popular.
Awesome. So what is the difference between taking a Pilates on the mat virtual class and doing a virtual yoga class for people that haven't done Pilates?
Well, there's so many different types of yoga too that I'm not even completely and totally familiar with. So I think it would also depend on the type of yoga.
Okay.
Because I know like yin yoga, you sit in positions for like almost 3 minutes.
Yeah. See, that's the only yoga I really like.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great form of yoga. And then some of the other yoga classes, I think you do more of a flow. Mm-hmm. And then some of them, I think you go like by a specific flow. But a Pilates mat class, there's all sorts of traditional exercises, but especially during COVID, I have found myself trying to be very creative and add in all different types of things, just so it doesn't get monotonous, like you're just doing this Pilates mat flow. You could do a traditional Pilates mat flow, I guess, pretty regularly, but it's just fun to throw in a lot of the extra stuff. I like to throw in stuff that replicates the reformer as best you can too, and sometimes you can do that with bands. So there's I just think Pilates and yoga are similar in ways, but for the most part, not really. One of my instructors teaches yoga also, so she probably could answer that question better than me. She is the one that teaches the PIO classes.
Well, I think that it's important to point out, because I'm coming to the in-person classes and getting on the reformer. I mean, you have 4 reformers, so I feel very COVID friendly in it. I feel like I'm in a safe space. I find that helpful. But I think that if you're not doing in person and virtual, by having somebody like you watching it versus doing like a YouTube video is, I think, especially for me doing Pilates, is like I need someone's eyes on me. Like I can't feel what my body is doing. I don't know if what I'm doing is correct, especially me dealing with some injuries of like I really need that guidance. And I think that that's just such a benefit to like just, I'm going to pop up a YouTube video and try to figure it out on my own. If you're sitting there in a virtual class guiding people along, like you can be like, no, don't hurt yourself.
Yes, exactly. And it's amazing how much like we make sure at the beginning of every class, or even if we shift positions, like if you were standing and then you went to the floor and I couldn't see you very well, I'd be like, Amanda, I need you to fix your camera, so that I can see you better. And if someone tries to face me, I usually tell them to turn to the side so I can still see their hips and I can still see like movement and that kind of thing. It is amazing how even virtually you can correct someone. Because also, I mean, it's not that there aren't great videos out there, but yeah, it's the same thing. Like, even if I did a Pilates video or whatever, the difference between me just doing it and me going to a class and one of my instructors being there, I mean, there's always little things that you can do that someone else watching you is just huge. So it's not like I go take a class and I always tell my instructors, especially, like, don't ever be afraid to correct me. That's what I want you to do, because that's what we're here for in each other's classes, is to be corrected, because there's just so many little things that you can do that you may not even realize you're tensing into your shoulders or lifting your shoulder blade when you shouldn't, or hiking your hip when you shouldn't, just all that little stuff that you might feel later.
Well, you pointed out to me just in the last class I was in of how much I pull everything from my back, my lower back, which is probably I have lower back problems.
Right.
And I didn't even like once you pointed it out, I'm like, oh, I do that. Like I just even noticed like when I get out of bed in the morning, like everything like my momentum gets pulled and yanks my lower back. And I didn't even really think about it until you pointed it out. And it's just like little stuff like that where I feel like that's super helpful. But speaking of me and my injuries, but just anybody that has, you know, bad knees, has a bad back, anything like that, like what is the reformer doing versus any other exercise that's actually helping those things?
Well, the reformer is more body friendly too than getting down on the floor. So I feel like sometimes during COVID, sometimes where people were like, I miss the reformer because getting up and down off the floor can be difficult for some people. Mm-hmm. You can adjust the reformer for things like, say, like when you're bending and coming in, if you can't bend your knees all the way in, you can adjust it and move it back so that when you come in, you don't bend to the point where it bothers your knees.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of like little adjustments that you can do on there too. And it helps you. Like you'll see like if we do like some single arm or single leg work especially, you'll find that the leg that's not in the strap is working so much harder than the one that's in the strap. The strap is actually helping you be a little more stable rather than you having to hold it up completely by yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why mat work can be very challenging because it's all you. And that's why sometimes we do add in bands because then you can kind of use it sort of like a leg strap and wrap it around your leg or whatever.
Well, what I've noticed, and this is just my own personal experience, because again, everybody's got their own jam. I feel like I've been not really shy about my personal dislike for bar classes, but like there's certain moves that we've done in Pilates where you get that leg shake, where we're doing that. But for me, it's different than because it feels like that's the goal when I've done bar classes. But in bar classes, it was painful. Like I felt like there was like knives in my feet.
Right.
Like there was the quivering, but also with this really heavy dose of pain for me personally. And so being on the reformer, it's like I feel like that benefit I wanted from a bar class. So like these muscles are working in ways I've never worked them, but without pain. So that's my own personal experience of like, that I can see the big difference in how that's helpful, at least for my body and my issues of what I've noticed from a reformer, which the only times I've really used the reformer before was with you. We did a class like last year and I used the reformer a little bit when I was in physical therapy at Christ Hospital for my knee, but it was not like, it was just, hey, just push out on your knee on this thing.
Right.
And so, which I think is also important to note that physical therapists are also using a reformer. So I just know there's so many people that listen to this podcast that everybody has their own aches and pains and things that they're working through to have something like I am really grateful right now because I've been depleted of exercise for almost the entire year of 2020 of here's something that I can do that's a good workout that I'm not hurting myself and I'm not too afraid of re-injuring myself.
Right. Yes, totally. I totally agree. And I think I've told you before, at least, I mean, we have clients that up to 87, 88 that I put on the reformer. So I can have someone come in and they want to be really challenged and we can have a very like challenged flow type class. But we could still incorporate, there can be some challenging things and then there can be some things like, okay, but we're going to work on this. And this might feel like a little boring right now, but you're going to be so happy with how much better your hips feel if we work on this. I feel like Pilates is one of the only things that really works on your feet. And look at how much we are on our feet.
Yeah, especially if, you work in healthcare.
And we wear bad shoes and so footwork is so good for you. It can be boring, but I mean, you have to do it, especially if you want to go out and run all the time, because you're breaking down your foot. You can go to Pilates and work on keeping your feet strong, I guess you would say.
Well, I wanted to bring up too, you brought up having some 88-year-old clients.
Yeah.
That even I was having a conversation with a friend where when they think of Pilates, you think of just like this Lululemon model, like Jennifer Aniston does Pilates, of like, oh, I don't know if I'll fit in there. People, like, again, a fear of like, I don't know what a reformer is. I'm afraid that it has to be this body type for this sort of exercise. But what I think is great, especially about your studio specifically, since I'm being there, is just like every age, every size, every type of person. It's not like, hey, you need to fit in this category to come here and work out.
Yes, and that is like one of my biggest loves about our studio. And last year I had the first person who said out loud to me, I came here because I heard your studio was body friendly. And I like wanted to cry because I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. I love that so much. I can't even, because so many of us in this world feel so much, our body image is over consuming. We think about it every time we get dressed, every time we move, some so much more than others, but it's a thing. A poor body image is really painful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want everyone to feel welcome. I want everyone to feel comfortable. And I love that your goal doesn't have to always be that you're going to be this twiggy girl coming in and out of there, or if that's what you think that you want your body to be at some point, but being able to focus more on being strong and being able to do what you can do. And not be in pain. Those are like so much more important, I think. But yeah, poor body image is such a thing. It just is.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and I think it's so great that, you've created this really welcoming, loving space to love your body and love the bodies around you and not feel any judgment, the true no judgment zone.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's what's awesome of like, we're talking, you're Shelley, you own the studio. It's Shellates. Like, this is your small space. This is your love, your passion. You've created this space for people. And I think that's also the beauty of small business, of like, this is your life's work and what you're putting into the world. And that's what people can be a part of, where it's not just this, faceless sort of corporate, I don't know, who runs this place or what it is. It's just, no, like you're coming, you're finding your people, you're finding your community. And even if you don't live in Cincinnati and you're not coming into your studio, like virtually anybody from anywhere can still kind of feel that they're part of this community of someone that, you've put your life's work into this. I mean, I think that's huge. And I think that especially at the beginning of COVID, we focused a lot on small business and independent business because everybody was getting shut down. And it feels like that's not so much of the narrative anymore. But I think that it still needs to be, because a lot of small business owners are struggling so much. And these are the people that really care about who they're serving and what they're putting into their community. And I just think that's just so important to support studios like yours. Not to say that, people can't go to a Planet Fitness or a Crunch or something like that. I get it. But it's like, it's also, you're getting so much more whenever you're coming into a space like yours. And I think we talked about this before we started recording. I think a lot of people have this thought of, oh, I'm going to this private studio. It's going to be so much more expensive than if I went somewhere else, which isn't necessarily true.
Correct. Yeah, it's not. Our prices align with any of the big clubs. Sometimes it's better. And yeah, the benefits far outweigh. But yeah, it isn't more expensive. And I would probably maybe think that too. Like you think small, private, personal, those all sound more expensive.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, it's not.
Well, and you offer so much too, from Pilates to personal training. Have you been doing virtual personal training too?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's going really well. Because I did a lot of small groups, and they just decided we're getting a great workout, and rather than us trying to navigate around one another, we'll just stay virtual for now. It's just safer. I'm getting a good workout. So we've stayed that way. I also have some virtual reformer clients.
Oh, so they have a reformer at their house. That's nice.
Well, one of my clients moved to South Carolina. We haven't been doing on the reformer lately, but she lived in a community that they had in their fitness center, a reformer.
Oh, okay.
So she would just take her laptop in there.
Nice.
And then I have a client in Indianapolis that has a reformer in her house, and she just gets it all set up, and she's like, "Can you see everything?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
See, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, because again, a reformer video is very hard to do because I've tried to do them before, and you're on the reformer, so then you're trying to listen to their instruction, but then also like craning your neck to see, wait, what?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel about like all online videos. I feel like I'm never, especially yoga, because I'm like, they'll be like, get into this pose. I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Right.
I have to watch them, but then I'm never fully getting into it because I'm like trying to like watch
Because you're
the
down in the
screen.
position, and then you're like looking up,
You're
like,
right.
wait, what?
That's why I think it's just, I haven't done like a virtual one-on-one class or with a trainer like what you do with your group classes. I've only just done like YouTube stuff or like the Beachbody stuff. And yeah, I feel like for me, like I brought up earlier, like I have to have someone's eyes on me. That's why I've worked out with Josh at Cincy 360 Fitness. I've worked out with you. I'm like, I just need someone, even with my physical therapist. We did a couple virtual sessions during COVID, and I'm like, I need you to be like, especially with physical therapy.
Well, physical therapy, yeah.
It's different. But it's like they could still see me, and it worked things out a little bit because they could kind of see.
But there's so much like direct manual work.
Yeah, with that.
With physical
especially
therapy,
with how my whatever it was. I don't know if I can classify it as sciatica, but it's like definitely everything felt like the symptoms of sciatica. It was just
right.
purely awful. And so like that's where I'm like, it's just, again, just to be so grateful just for movement of like, I don't need to be this shredded person. I don't have to, again, avoid the body image of just being grateful of like a body that I can move in. Like you brought
Right.
up earlier of any body, any size that can come work out with you, is just come in here and move your body and use your body, and how we should just be so grateful for the opportunity to do that instead of constantly tear ourselves down because we can't do more.
Right.
It's such a hard cycle, and I feel like I've definitely been smacked with that lesson this year. And so, and you even saw me in the last class I was in of yours, like I just get freaked out. I'm like, am I going to hurt myself again? And like, yeah, if you weren't there to, like, I trust you of like, that you wouldn't put me in a position where I'm going to hurt myself. And I think that's also the danger of doing something like, not to trash on Beachbody, because I did enjoy doing Beachbody, but Tony Horton isn't there to tell me I'm not going to hurt myself.
Right.
Of like, they could say, yes, do this move, which could be good for 99% of people. And then I try it and, I roll a wrist or something.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there's going to always be the chance of injuring yourself doing a video, I guess.
Yeah.
Anytime, I guess. Not even just because someone isn't watching you, just because someone could be watching you, and I guess if you did something super crazy and they weren't able to physically stop you.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely just keeping the eye on them. But also, I think also one of the other big things is like the motivational factor. A lot of people, are very motivated. But you turn on a video and you're by yourself, and you're like, pause.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some water. 5 minutes later, you start it back. That can be, it kind of keeps you going too.
Yeah.
And in the COVID world, I think that's also what kept us going is all of a sudden you weren't supposed to see these people that you see all the time.
Yeah.
We still felt like we were seeing each other.
Yeah.
So there was the camaraderie of that too, because, your workout people become your friends, they're your different friends. They may not be the same people that you go out and have drinks with all the time, but they're your friends and we share stuff with each other. And yeah, it's just a place of comfortableness, I guess.
And I will say that out of the classes that I have been to of yours, everybody's friends and everybody knows each other and they're chatting each other up, and it's definitely this vibe of just
and they totally are, but it I wouldn't say they probably all go out together or they have totally different friend pools a lot of times. They might some go to the same clubs or something like that and they run into each other there, but yeah, it's just we know so much about each other's families, and then I don't want it to sound like then you come in and everybody knows each other and then you feel so I'm glad to hear that you didn't feel that way either, because I don't want it to sound like, you come in and everybody's friends and you're this outsider.
Oh, no. Well, I was even just telling you of because I was enjoying listening to everybody. So in the last class I was in, with the last two classes, so it was the 4 reformers and there's 3 other women, and then I was on the 4th reformer, and they all knew each other and they're chatting each other up. But I'm I let you know, I'm the type of person that I'm just quiet when I work out. It's not that I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm happy to listen to them chat. But then I'm I don't want people to be oh, Amanda's such a bitch. And especially I feel that on myself of being a podcast host, of being on the radio forever. Everybody thinks that I'm going to walk into the room with a mic in my hand and or just, but I'm I've just such, when I exercise, it's just so much my own little bubble, and it's not against anything else. And so that's where I'm I worry of why is she being quiet? Is she not but it's the same, it's such a weird dynamic, but I didn't feel bad at all. I never got that vibe from anybody. I felt if I wanted to jump in the conversation, it'd be totally fine. And I just chose not to. So I felt it was a good, comfortable, fun space. But then that's just where, again, self-conscious, and you talk about body image and everything else of where I'm in my own head.
Right.
It's my own story. I'm telling myself of oh, are they judging you because you're being too quiet? And usually the answer is no, nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody cares. They're talking if they feel like it. And those same people, you could be in class the next time and they hardly talk because it just, how you're feeling that day.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or someone brings up something that you want to talk about, and so they end up talking about it more or something. But usually I'm trying to keep you all moving, that it's not too much talking anyway,
Yeah. No, I felt it was.
You have to stay focused, otherwise then it turns into them talking over me. So. And
then you have to go around.
Yeah, and then they're what did you say? What are we doing?
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to this and they're you know what? I love Pilates, or I've never tried Pilates. I either want to check Shelley out in person or virtually. What's the best way to find you, get in contact?
Our website, Shellates.com. That would be the best. You can check out what we stand for and all of that. But then there's a form that you can fill out, and it will send me an email.
Okay.
And then, any questions, so we can that's usually how people will reach me on there. You're more than welcome to call me or text me also. I'm obviously not opposed to that. Just some people seem to feel more comfortable with email. Sometimes you can kind of lay out your questions, tell me where you're at, what you're looking for, that kind of thing. So either one of those, my number or our website.
Awesome. And I'll put that all in the show notes. And then I'm looking forward to doing more with you and getting my body in a better
you're fun to
place.
work with. I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah, since my body is such a jacked mystery that everyone that has worked with me
We're
is
going to
like,
fix you.
Right? Fingers crossed. It's going to happen. Awesome, Shelley. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
For info on health coaching and more, go to AmandaValentineBites.com.